when somebody does go and search an apartment and sees that Google business profile or doesn't, that's an example of SEO's role in creating a lead and providing the visibility for that apartment when somebody goes through that process of searching a specific asset, that they're actually showing up. And then in the event that they then engage on that Google business profile, which is super common these days, doesn't even go to the website and looks through maybe some of the content, floor plans, etc., and then makes a call, often that result, that action does not show up as a lead when you go through your reporting at the end of the month with your account manager or even your marketing team. When you get into websites that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of sessions and visitors, there's a lot more data to work with, which should give you a lot more confidence about what those trends or patterns look like. But when it comes to multifamily, often you will only see a few thousand sessions in a given month, certainly the number of visitors. And that makes it extremely difficult to develop, even over time, reliable patterns. Hey, this is Reid Wicoff. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Digible Inc. And today I'm going to be launching an extension of our podcast, the Digible Dudes, called Riffing with Reid. Not rambling, not ranting, riffing. So I'm going to do my best to stay organized and focused, hence actually have a computer with a little bit of notes in front of me, which is atypical. And you might notice this David is not sitting beside me. He, for those that don't know, has stepped out of the day-to-day business at Digible to pursue some other, I'll just say, life ventures. Big avid runner, ultra runner, as many of you know about David. So he's going to be putting some more focus there, but also spending time with his family and exploring some other options and ventures. So super excited for him. He will still be doing some co-hosting with me over the next, hopefully, few years. But it's just going to be less frequent, less predictable. So thought it made sense since, I know we built up a decent following to continue really the purpose he and I both had for this podcast, which was to be public learners, hopefully also educators, help teach some of the ins and outs of what we know best, which is multifamily marketing and technology. So now that PSA, I guess, is kind of covered off on, just to be clear again about that purpose, we really want to educate as much as we can and learn about the rental real estate industry and focus on multifamily as well as just the emerging technology. Occasionally myself or a guest may stray into other industries and topics as the conversation leads us there, but ultimately we're going to try and remain steadfast to Digible's primary audience and expertise, which of course is multifamily marketing. All right. The inaugural podcast here. First go with this. I thought it'd be fun and maybe a little bit ambitious to set myself off on a voyage, a journey to share 100 multifamily marketing principles. So I'm not going to bite this all off at once. I don't know how long that podcast would be. I'm going to do it in tranches. And just share, and this is in no particular order, so it's not force ranked. But just when you think about multifamily marketing and all that's underneath that, what are some of the more valuable principles that I could impart that I've learned over the last 10 years in this industry? I'm sure plenty of these will not necessarily land or be fully agreed on, but that's kind of the point. Also, would love to hear feedback, comments, disagreement, hopefully, the productive kind, about some of the principles that I've formulated over the years. But that's what we're going to do today. So a couple caveats before I jump into that. Housekeeping. I'm going to go at this with the framework of the start, stop, and continue for those that have done that, especially in leadership roles. It's not that uncommon. You can do that for roadmaps. You can do that for business functions. You can do that for employee feedback, performance reviews, things like that. But essentially, what how I'm going to approach this is here's some principles that I think need to start happening or should start applying. You should start applying. Here's what I think are some principles you should probably stop, and then some things that I think we should continue, and when I say we or you, mostly referring to the multifamily marketer here, but I think it's also good for certain operators, owners, investors to catch wind of some of these principles too. So hopefully share away. And as much as I can, I'm going to try to incorporate data and meaningful anecdotes that very well could turn into lots of anecdata. If you guys know the reference, I think Andrew Huberman often uses that term, where it's more of a blend of some of the hard data, but also things that we hear a lot from our clients or from other thought leaders in the industry. So just know that's something I'll try to stay committed to. And then, also important, and I think I established this up front, but that these are my beliefs, my principles that I've, started to formulate. It's not necessarily a reflection of how Digible sees multifamily marketing, the industry, technology, etc. So again, these are very much opinion of one. And also, this is maybe a little bit for my daughters, which are not avid listeners, but occasionally they do, but also for anybody else that might be sensitive to language. Sometimes I can let a few expletives slip. I'm going to do my best to keep this at least PG-13. But if I offend anybody, it's certainly not intentional. And I think that more or less covers it. So let's go ahead and get into it. Time to riff. I'm going to start with 10 principles. I don't know if the next tranche that I do is going to be 5, 20, or 10. It seemed easy enough to start with 10 if we're headed for 100. Again, the goal is to get through 100 by the end of this year. First principle is to stop chasing the MTA dragon. What's MTA? That's multi-touch attribution, at least to digital marketers it is. And the reason that I am suggesting that you stop chasing that dragon is just the number of variables that are involved in trying to connect those dots. I know it's a bit of a lightning rod, and one of the most common asks we get from our clients, as well as a lot of owners, want to be able to know down to a user, down to a platform, exactly where those leads came from. And although I'm sure I'll say my friends at Knock or Funnel and some of the other CRMs that are working furiously on solving this would probably fully disagree with me on this and say it's the last thing you should let go of. My position on this is that one, there's not really enough data usually with one website to formulate clear multi-touch attribution. When you get into websites that have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of sessions and visitors, there's a lot more data to work with, which should give you a lot more confidence about what those trends or patterns look like. But when it comes to multifamily, often you will only see a few thousand sessions in a given month, certainly the number of visitors. That makes it extremely difficult to develop, even over time, reliable patterns. Not to mention that what we're seeing more and more is each customer journey, even within the same individual, can be different. So meaning if I were to lease from an apartment today and you were to map that, and then a year from now I did the same thing, you'd very likely see a different path that I took. There are some directional learnings that you can get from it, but in my opinion, that's where it should stay. The other thing is just data hygiene. So when you look at a lot of these different platforms, all the different platforms, I should say, there isn't a whole lot of continuity or consistency in how the data is kind of groomed, cleaned, and ultimately, I guess, labeled or defined. And that also creates a lot of inconsistency and questions. To me, it's most important that you look more zoomed out and say, okay, based on this media mix, this is the outcome. And when I say outcome, I think more ROAS, which I'll get to in a second, that is really ideal, versus scrutinizing month to month, week to week, all the different media or advertising that you're using. I think you'll get lost in the sauce, as they say, and end up chasing that dragon, really slash tail, I guess, indefinitely. All right, so my number 2 multifamily marketing principle is to stop focusing on rate structures, cost models, cost in general when it comes to advertising, and focus on ROAS. And so just to be clear, those two very much are a relationship. But what I mean is a lot of times we get asked pretty quickly, and this isn't just, for Digible, it's for any of the other agencies that are in the industry, but also for the ILSs that often are the other half of the spend, depending on who you're talking to. It shouldn't matter so much whether our management fee is 20%, 40%, 10%. What really matters is what is the return that you're getting on that spend with Digible or with any other agency or with your ILSs. Because if I were to tell you, hey, we are in the neighborhood of 20% and then drop that to 10%, I wouldn't get too excited about that unless you were able to maintain the same lead volume and quality or even improve that. Then you're improving what matters most, which is your return on those ad dollars. Same difference if I were to say we're actually going to increase to 30%. Instead of immediately saying, no chance, can't go for that, going to move on. If I were to maintain or improve the return on ad spend through that rate increase, then that is what you should focus on. That's what's most important. And frankly, that's why I think the ILSs have been able to continue either maintaining or increasing their fees, which I know is not what everybody wants to hear and has been really frustrated by. But at the end of the day, the ROAS is still there, at least effectively enough, meaning a strong enough ROAS that buys keep going through a lot of those ILSs. So going to move on to now principle number 3. I would say stop prioritizing sizzle over substance, and I'm going to say AKA conversions when it comes to websites. So this is something that David and I have talked about on and off over the years with our clients, and I think this message is probably more for owners than marketers, but certainly marketers feel strongly, and they should, about what a website looks like, the brand, the feel. But ultimately, what is the goal of a website? What's the number one function or purpose of a website? It's to convert a lead. At least that's how I see it. So you can talk about, that first experience, like conveying the experience, getting somebody excited. But at the end of the day, ultimately, it's a point to convert a prospect, to get them to fill out a form, to get them to give you a phone call, to schedule a virtual tour, to schedule, an in-person tour. And so because of that, this isn't to say the look and feel of a website doesn't matter, but I think it often is over prioritized when it comes to, multifamily in particular with those luxury assets. And it doesn't do you a lot of good to have a beautiful website that is converting, 10x less of one that isn't, I'll just say quite as attractive. So it's really just math on that and finding the sweet spot. But as it stands right now, I feel like there's still too much focus. And I know hard message, and people may not agree with this, but I still think there's too much focus on the looks, feel, as and even the interface of a website in comparison to the importance of what your conversion rate looks like, which for me is more about the performance. And that's going to include things like speed. It's going to include things like site architecture. And now it's been a long time coming, but we're starting to see more companies experiment with conversion rate optimization, which is the ability to be able to move around different content, where the phone number is, where the address is, et cetera, until you find kind of that optimal point of conversion rates. Number 4, and this is my last stop principle, but it's stop checking the box for SEO or with SEO and start treating it, and this is going to sound funny, the same as you treat paid media. And what I mean by that is the same scrutiny that we see with paid media. So when we talk about paid media, at least our experience with clients, way more likely to get into the weeds and hold our feet to the fire as far as what those cost per leads look like, what the campaign strategy is, what data we're leveraging, et cetera, the creative. Then you move into the conversation of SEO, and generally speaking, it's a much faster conversation, less questions, less scrutiny. And for me, what feels like more of a check the box. It's like we know that SEO to some degree, but most people don't know to what degree, is important. We want to make sure that our information is correct, that the back end is, as I was just talking about, performance and conversion rates is optimized so that when people get to the website, it's not a struggle for them to actually convert, fill out a form, make a phone call, etc. I think this needs to shift dramatically for a few reasons. But ultimately, SEO is and should be seen more as a part of your lead gen, strategy. And the easy part to explain there is the conversion rates. It's like, what's the point of bringing traffic, bringing leads if you're not in a position to convert? And that's the easy part, again, to explain the value or importance of SEO. Although I think we are far from kind of the conclusivity that we'd like to get to as far as the data and then the value of those two platforms together, meaning paid and organic. But the part that I think is less frequently kind of, I guess, thought of or seen is SEO's role and importance in visibility. I think it's just understated, maybe. It's not that nobody, thinks of it this way, but when somebody does go and search an apartment and sees that Google business profile or doesn't, that's an example of SEO's role in creating a lead, and providing the visibility for that apartment when somebody goes through that process of searching a specific asset, that they're actually showing up. And then in the event that they then engage on that Google business profile, which is super common these days, doesn't even go to the website and looks through maybe some of the content, floor plans, etc., and then makes a call, often that result, that action, I should say, does not show up as a lead when you go through your reporting at the end of the month with your account manager or, whoever your vendor is, or even your marketing team. Instead, it's credited usually as just another view, we'll say, to Google Business for your Google Business profile. But just, again, think about it. That would just happen. That was a lead. Somebody searched, found your Google Business profile, or found you in some of the other offline, or I'm sorry, I was going to say off-site, directories. There's a lot of different places people can find you other than just your Google business profile. But ultimately, if they engage, that is a lead, and it didn't often wasn't connected or generated by your paid media or even your ILS. Not to say that they didn't have some interaction there at some point. And so the way we're starting to think about this now at Digible is really SEO is a very key piece of lead generation in the form of like visibility and conversion. Visibility and conversion. Without those, you are not going to see the same lead volume. And we will often see that show up when we look at Google Analytics and you're looking at the reporting and kind of where all your traffic sources and referrals are. And you'll see a big bucket typically with paid, where it's directly attributable. It's like we set up events in the back on the back end. And this is what we know we got from that paid media. Then you'll also always see a part of that pie chart that is unknown sometimes or is just listed as organic, referral traffic, but those are generating leads as well. And so if you think about a pie chart of leads each month, there is a significant number of leads that usually are just not attributed to your paid media. And it's too convenient to me, way too convenient to say, oh, that was just that's just referral traffic, or that was resonant. It's like, no, there's a good portion of that non-paid leads that are directly resulting from a strong or sound SEO strategy. So key takeaway is start treating, thinking, scrutinizing your SEO strategy the same way that and with the same attention and rigor that you put into the paid media. And the last part to encourage everyone to start focusing more there, of course, is the generative engine optimization, the AI overviews, the kind of tectonic shifts right now in change in how people are searching and consuming online. This is going to shift the pendulum, and it may start slow, but I think it's going to pick up very fast from an emphasis on a paid strategy to an emphasis more on an organic / content strategy. And so for those reasons, again, start leaning in now and start, really scrutinizing, paying more attention, asking tough, questions, and hopefully building a far more integrated approach towards your lead generation. Okay, so I covered off on the four stops. Quick recap: it's stop chasing the dragon for your multi-touch attribution. Stop focusing on just advertising cost, and regardless of whether it's management fees, ILS packages, start focusing and reverse engineering your approach based on return on ad spend. And then stop prioritizing sizzle over substance, aka conversion, when it comes to websites. There's way too much priority that's being put on the aesthetics and the look of a website versus actually what it's doing for you to drive business outcomes. The fourth that I just covered on the stop is checking the SEO box. Stop doing that and start thinking of it more as a significant contributor to your lead generation, your demand gen. And that's going to show up really in two ways. It's going to be through visibility, which is, of course, critical to drive leads. SEO done the right way is going to create more visibility for your properties and your assets. And then the conversion side of that. So it's like once they get there, it's critical that you don't miss those opportunities. All right, so now we're going to move to a few starts. As I talked about the stop, start, continue framework here. Start defining more what failure looks like when you're testing new strategies, new platforms, all in the vein of like lead generation and marketing. So the reason I'm saying start focusing or defining, I should say, what failure looks like is I think too often, marketers, especially these days, are caught in purgatory when it comes to strategies that they're testing, new platforms, etc. Because what they often will do with the vendor, which is healthy, I mean, it's something I would completely recommend continuing, is they will try to establish what success looks like. So you go through the process with a vendor, and let's just use an easy platform, I think still trending right now, TikTok. It's like, hey, we think it's time for this property. We're in the perfect situation. It's a lease up. We'd love to create a little bit more fun, hip vibe and convey more of the experience of the property. So we want to try TikTok. And but we're not sure what to expect. What does success look like with a TikTok campaign? What metrics should I be following? And then do you have some benchmarks to help me know whether, we're winning or whether, we're not? And through that process, you have a decent idea. So let's just say you agreed, hey, if we can get, 20 to 30 inquiries coming from this TikTok or people naming it as something that they saw, as well as a certain amount of views, and then we were able to connect it also all the way through on the back end on GA so that we could see some direct attribution, certain engagement, from that video, then that's a win. Well, that's great. And again, it's important. Keep doing that. But what's not often happening is, what does failure look like? And if you're not clear for yourself, ultimately, the team and with the vendor, then you'll often end up not quite getting, in some cases by more than a small margin, to the success criteria. And instead of, the 20 or 30 that you said success was as far as the leads or the number of views, the number of traffic on the back end, you might end up with 10% of that. Is that failure, or is that okay and something that you're going to just keep rolling with? The number of things right now that are being brought to multifamily marketers, as far as new platforms, technology, strategy, solutions, I think is pretty overwhelming. I empathize quite a bit. And so collectively, I think it makes it really difficult to really know what's not working. So you have a lot of variables that also are muddying this picture. But ultimately, if you were to run a TikTok campaign and get what I just described, kind of the other scenario of like just 5, leads, and maybe I should be saying 1 or 2. Depends on your situation, I guess. And just, 50 to 75 page views from that, I would probably call that failure. And so then not to continue TikTok potentially the next month. And it's something partly, I'm sharing because of my own experience and things that we've experimented with as a company where certain initiatives, certain strategies, we just haven't really been clear up front what failure looks like. And so, again, collectively, it can add up where you have just this basket of strategies that are stuck in the middle. It's just this big bucket of gray. And so I'm just encouraging everybody to start really defining failure, not just success. That was probably a little bit longer than I needed to go on that point. But all right, let's move on to the next one. Start making your content smart. We're on the cusp, I guess, as an industry. Like, we're starting to see this happen, but we're far from where I think we could be and really should be as far as the content that's produced, how informed it is versus, I'll say, how ignorant it is. So let me give you some examples here. But when you're posting, let's just say on, I'm going to use, since I think I mentioned Google Business Profile, but you're posting on Google Business, your Google Business Profile. Often the content that goes up is relatively generic, and meaning it could be just a random picture of one of the amenities at your asset, at your property. Why did that happen? Well, it's because, and not to put the blame on one side or the other, but between the marketer, maybe the property manager, as well as if you're using an agency, there was no, I'll say, either conversation or integration to make sure that that picture of whatever amenity it was powered or fueled by data, like in the back end, let's just say, in Google Analytics. So bear with me on this example, but if you were getting a lot of page views on a specific amenity, like your infinity pool, then it makes sense to me that you would see a picture of an infinity pool on your Google Business Profile. But what if you were getting way more page views from prospects focused on your gym? Or some of your community events? Well, what do you think makes sense as far as posting on Google Business Profile? The easier example, and this is where I think we made some progress through integrations and through just hopefully enough conversations, I guess, is inventory itself. It's like, why would you post, again, I'm going to keep using Google Business Profile, a 2-bedroom if you're sold out, or a studio if you're sold out? Makes no sense. And so that's what I mean by start posting smart content, not ignorant content. Because if the content that you're putting up or your agency does not have any data fueling it, whether it's coming from your PMS, coming from your CMR or CRM, coming from your Google Analytics, there's other more sophisticated, and this is where I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead about where we could be. But think about the data that you're getting, depending on who you're using, like Elise AI, or if you're using Leia, with Apartment List, BetterBots, Perk. There's a lot of these AI bots, agents, right? Agentic AI, I suppose, that have incredibly rich data that we could be leveraging as an industry to create much smarter content. It's like, what is the chatter right now coming from prospects on the front end? What are they asking about? What are they not asking about? And how that could potentially inform much smarter content. So key takeaway, again, there's so many examples of like how we could enrich and inform the content that is produced, whether it's on the website, whether it's on your social media pages, whether it's in your paid media, and whether it's on things like Google Business Profile. Just a lot of opportunity there. So start making your content smart. Next one, number 7. So I don't know if I should be holding these up, but would be start opening up your data kimono. Hopefully I'm not the only one that's ever used the expression open kimono. I don't think so. This is it's so important in order to optimize a marketing strategy that whoever your support, I'll just say either vendors or your team is that's putting together the strategy, almost always it involves third party. And so I'm going to use us because it's easy, Digible. And if you're not providing and opening up that data kimono to us so that we have access, and I'm going to use just an easy but maybe shocking example, but ILS data, then we're at a disadvantage. We're surely at a disadvantage if we don't have property data, if we don't have some of the local insights that are coming from the property manager. This is where we get a little into the anecdata, but just there's so much data for one property, and more often than not that we could be using that we are not. And I don't think it's usually intentional. Sometimes it is. And I don't know if that's driven, and I don't want to be, I guess, naive about this, but about, some of the, legal, I guess, kind of parameters around data. But this, I'm not in any way talking about personally identifiable information. What I am speaking about is the data that has no residence name on it or is fully anonymized. But I'm also talking about hyperlocal insights. I'm talking about other meaningful data sets that could and likely would contribute to a better strategy. But when you are operating more in a siloed nature, where you kind of move from one, let's say, vendor to the next, or one platform to the next, inevitably you're going to reduce, the efficacy of that marketing campaign. And so you're more likely to draft, is maybe a better way of putting this. Think NASCAR for anybody that's a fan, of getting all of your data in a line. It's going to work a lot better for you, and you're going to see better performance than if it's real disparate and disconnected, which is unfortunately, I think, fairly common for us right now in the industry. So again, open up that data kimono, share it with as many people as you can in the right way, legally, and I think you're going to see a lot better results. All right, so we're going to wrap this up now. I think that was the first 7. So recapping the starts, start defining what failure looks like, not just success. Important there is that you know when to move on, so you don't get stuck kind of just in between with a lot of your experimentation and your media. Start making your content smart. I'll say not ignorant, and that just means make sure as much data as possible is informing what you're putting up online, whether that's Google Business Profile, whether that's in your paid media campaigns, whether it's in your social media. And then start opening up that data kimono. That's what I just wrapped with, but the more data that you can share with your partners that are aiming, kind of have that shared mutual purpose of lead generation, the more likely you are to find success, to have great results. All right, we're in the home stretch. These last 3 are going to be what I would like to see our multifamily marketers in the industry at large continue. So that means we're at number 8, and I'm going to start with continuing prioritizing integrations. And sorry if this is a Captain Obvious moment, but the more that the industry together keeps talking about this, the better. Because there's just a ceiling to how far a marketing campaign or strategy can go if the data is not, if there's not enough data supporting it. And so I, obviously just wrapped with the importance of sharing data, and mentioned the example of the content being smart versus ignorant. And so much of that hinges on those data integrations. So I'm not sure there's much more to do than continue to push your vendors, advocate for this. Obviously, there's, we'll say, kind of a bigger issue or challenge sometimes with some of the larger prop tech and being able to get access to that. But there are I don't want to say hacks, but there's still ways to get that data through. But ultimately, integrations obviously is where it's at, and it's going to make everything drive a lot more smoothly. You're going to see a lot better business outcomes. Moving on to number 9. So gonna show here, my jinky basketball finger. This one is continue asking tough questions, hard questions. And so this is something that's really been great, I think, for Digible, speaking from a firsthand experience. But the questions that we got 2 or 3 years ago, certainly 5 or 6 years ago, have shifted dramatically for the better, meaning far more advanced. And I think that's a credit to a lot of things, but certainly the industry in general, who we're bringing in, who we're putting in these roles. And it's also, how competitive the space has gotten. But it's no longer acceptable to have a surface level understanding of paid media. Paid search is an easy one. Now the questions that we often will get in our monthly reporting calls are way more prescriptive, way more detailed, challenging so much of what we do. And I think there was almost a jolt, brief stretch for us where it's like, where is this coming from? And maybe not, I guess, embracing it as much as, I think we should. Fortunately, that's shifted for Digible. And right now, I think we're in this almost honeymoon stage of on both sides where it's like there's just these really rich, deeper conversations about strategy. And it's a two-way street. That's the only way that happens. And I think naturally the outcome of that is always going to be better results, always going to be better results. It's going to be better context. It's going to be better conversations that ultimately our marketers will carry back to owners, to operators, to investors, if those questions are more thoughtful, just love it. Keep doing it. We're all getting better from it. All right. Last one, this is marketing principle number 10. This one is continuing to rethink, not let go. I emphasize that, not necessarily let go of your ILS strategy. So I know there's been plenty of discussion, and you see it, I feel like at least one panel at every marketing conference talks about the use case or case study of being able to move off of, ILS and move more towards building their either own version of that or moving a lot more of their advertising, if not all of their marketing dollars, over to digital advertising and marketing. And sometimes that does make sense. That is part of rethinking. So again, continue doing that. But something that now I'm hearing more recently that I think is great, sign, signal, and should continue is, okay, I am going to keep spending actually on ILS, but I'm going to get more prescriptive, more sophisticated with how I approach that. And that falls in line with what I was just saying as far as continue to ask those really hard questions. And that was pointed more at agencies like Digible, but it's also at those ILSs. And I think what you'll find or have we've been hearing is that there's more room, both frankly to negotiate, but also optionality in how you're approaching this than maybe you experienced in the past. But if you're not asking the questions, if you're not pushing, that conversation forward, then naturally you're going to miss that opportunity. Let me give you an example though of how we've rethought, but also this has been very much driven by some of the data that we've seen that we've shared, I think at least once or twice on this podcast. Relative to how you might look differently at an ILS strategy. I'm going to use this comparison of a dating website, but if you were to post a profile on Match.com and you were to say, I am interested in humans that are human adults that are over 3 feet tall, you're going to likely get flooded, right? With, well, maybe not. Maybe that freaks somebody out if they actually saw that was your only requirements. But my point is that you'll get inundated or could, with prospects. Now think just the opposite. I go to Match.com and I put up a profile and I invest, the time to put in all sorts of keywords, as well as interests, just loaded up with information about me as a person and what I am looking for. What do you think the volume is going to look like? Just the opposite, right? But the people that do probably find me, so this is the important part, are ones that are way more qualified, right? That might be a good match for me. Very similar in the way you could think about or rethink your ILS strategy is when you are thinking about even a lease up, but certainly this applies for those that are stabilized or maybe a little bit further along. How important is it for you to get just sheer volume versus quality? And so given that most consumers, when they do get onto these ILSs, and probably not telling anybody anything they don't know, but pay attention, really think about this, are coming in and filtering. So if I go to apartments.com, there's a very good chance that I'm going to say, here's what my budget is, here's the neighborhood that I'm interested in, here's the school systems, the safety, whether there's pets, etc. By the time I get through that process, you will quickly notice that your options go from super wide to super small. So in thinking about your ILS strategy, knowing that that's the way the user experience typically goes when it comes to these ILSs, how important is it for you to just have maximum exposure? What I think is smarter is to kind of have a bottoms up strategy where it's like, I'm really going to focus on quality and then tease out different options to get me to my sweet spot of volume plus quality. But it's a lot more difficult, and sometimes contracts are very difficult to get around if you start wide instead of, if you start deep instead of wide. So a lot less room for you to pivot, to explore options. And this also allows you, typically, if you start kind of more bottoms up, thinking again of that typical user experience, where you can actually add more buys. And what collectively is likely to happen is through being on 4 or 5 different ILSs, and yes, again, granting that there's been some consolidation, but trust me, there's still plenty of options out there. If you're on if you take a wider approach, but you're making sure that you're using the right keywords, the right images, optimizing as much as you can your profiles or your listings on those different directories, collectively, that can add to a similar, if not better number than just choosing one ILS and going for a higher level sponsorship. And the beauty of it is that more often than not, those are going to be more qualified leads, right? Because it actually was a little harder to find you, not easier, in a good way. So I hope that all makes sense, but just something, there's a lot more today rethinking of ILS strategy, and I think that's great. Just keep doing that, but I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to just let go of it and see if they can make a run without it, but I know that that's worked for plenty of properties too, and PMCs. So you just gotta experiment, you gotta test things out. All right, I'm gonna quickly recap these last 3 on what I think you should continue as it relates to marketing principles. And first being, keep prioritizing. I don't know if requiring I'd go that far, but keep prioritizing and pushing for integrations. It makes such a big difference as far as your results, meaning integrations are the bridge, right? The piping, if you will, to get as much of that data as you can into your marketing campaigns. Just try to imagine Google or ChatGPT and what we would get from those platforms if they were looking at 100 websites instead of 1 billion. Well, in a microcosm, it's the same thing with marketing strategies. And what's critical for us to get these things off and running quickly and efficiently are integrations. So a bit of Captain Obvious, but I just would say keep pushing on those integrations. The next one, recap, is just asking really hard questions. So this is all boats are rising. It's great to see more experience. I think there was just this small stretch for us where we almost caught off guard, where it felt like, man, just last year, there's a noticeable difference in the types of questions we're getting asked relative to our strategy, to our data, how we're thinking about these campaigns. So keep doing that. I think it's great, for the industry. And then continue rethinking. And as I said, not necessarily letting go of your ILS strategy, although that may make sense. It's a case-by-case basis, I suppose. But I just think there's a lot more room, and we're starting to realize that. And I don't know if it's a result of the tougher questions and, what's really provoking this or prompting it. But it seems to me that the ILSs themselves, of course, are evolving and are providing much better options, more sophisticated options. And I also think that the marketers are recognizing, that there's more opportunity there. So that could be, I'm going to use more search terminology, but that could be the keywords, it could be the descriptors, it could be the images that you're using, and very much how you're thinking about flexing where you can on different packages, different regions, locales, etc. When you really think about that, how that consumer navigates an ILS, it can back you into a much more sophisticated, intelligent strategy. And I think the ILSs are now really opening that up more than they have in the past. And, if I'm talking out of turn or somebody disagrees, by all means, comment, let me know. But I think, it's a great time. Keep doing that. Keep rethinking your ILS strategy. All right. Well, if you're still with me, I appreciate it. I know that was a lot and there's more to come. So this is my first tranche. Like I said, those are 10 marketing principles. I got 90 more ahead of me, and I'm going to be trying to get that done by the end of 2025. So along the way, if there's some things that you guys want to share, again, comment, email me direct, reid@digible.com, and I'd be happy to consider it and see if we're on the same page. But anyways, look forward to the next one, and expect more riffing with Reids in the near future.